Hi, everyone, and welcome to Measure Up, the podcast for transformational school leaders. I'm Nicole Alioto, CEO of Alla Breve Consulting. I've spent the past 25 years working with schools to ensure that schools are making the best decisions from the best data. And today we'll finish our series on the Blue Ribbon Commission report on graduation measures that is in New York State. In this episode, we'll take a look at the research that informed the report. I've read the report. I've read the research report that informed the report. I've attended forums. I've watched the Board of Regents meetings where there have been presentations, and I continue to see a need for better information to drive this massive overhaul of the education system in New York State. Let's look at the approach to most of the research that informed this report and its recommendations, and that is crowdsourcing. The idea of crowdsourcing for research makes me think of a section of my recent book, Your School Sucks, Why Schools Fail to Measure Up and What to Do About It, where we talk about easy doesn't always mean effective. I've seen crowdsourcing used in place of research quite a bit recently. It's being used to drive strategic planning and inform policy decisions. But first, let's talk about the differences between brainstorming and crowdsourcing. They're pretty similar, and when we think of brainstorming, we often think of it as being an in-person activity, but a lot of crowdsourcing is really more like online brainstorming. But here are the two definitions that have been compiled with the help of my AI graduate assistant, but I did look to see where the sources of information came from to inform the AI definition, and it did use research-based articles, it used dictionary references, and a few other sources. So it is compiled with some useful and trusted sites. So here are the two definitions. Brainstorming. A group of people throw ideas around and comment on each other's ideas. Brainstorming can be effective, but it can be susceptible to groupthink and cognitive bias. It can also be difficult to get the right people to attend. Now, if you see getting to attend, it's thinking about it in terms of an in-person activity. But online brainstorming, it could be difficult to get the right people to participate. Crowdsourcing. A problem is presented to a large group of people who can then provide input on how to solve it. Crowdsourcing can provide a more diverse set of ideas than brainstorming. It can also give companies immediate access to a large audience's thoughts. However, crowdsourcing results can be limited to the participating group, which can skew the results. You can see from both definitions, there are concerns with these approaches due to the sampling and how representative the sample is to the population that we're looking to get insights from. Now, I'm going to share a graphic here that if you're listening in, it would be hard to see, but the graphic is a summary of typical social science research. There are three phases: exploration, research design, and research execution. And when you look at this graphic, exploration does include literature review, which is also often part of the crowdsourcing or brainstorming prompts. Yet crowdsourcing or brainstorming often goes right past the design, which includes sampling and piloting, and also skips over theory and operationalization and goes right to the data collection component of research execution. So how can crowdsourcing as your sole or primary approach to research impact decisions in education? And before we jump into the education example, let's go back to the ice cream example from a few episodes back. Imagine I am the head of an ice cream company, and I'm looking to get insights from customers and people who might have formerly been customers and also potential customers. I want to know what individuals like most about ice cream in terms of textures, flavors, types, for example, novelty ice cream versus pints or soft serve ice cream stations, etc. And I want this information to inform my research and development team and possibly changes to production lines in the future. If I use a crowdsourcing approach to this project, a question floated out to people via social media or maybe email followers is, tell us what you like most about ice cream. Now, that prompt is shared without any demographics collected. They're coming in from, as I said, social media or responding to a link within an email. Again, tell us what you like most about ice cream. A handful of answers may include, I like that it's gluten-free. It reminds me of my childhood. Chocolate is the best. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I remember when it was a cheap dessert, but now it seems like every ice cream is at least $5. I like vanilla, but only with apple pie. There are 3 places in my town that have ice cream, so that's awesome. So through crowdsourcing, these statements are shared. Sometimes somebody will respond to all statements depending on how much time they have, and others will see a sample of them, and that will stop when the person decides to stop providing ratings on those statements. Imagining hundreds and hundreds of comments floating around, the top rated statements were the childhood comment. So kind of reminds me of childhood. And the other top rated comment was, I remember when it was cheap. that cost comment. These are helpful considerations for sales and marketing, but I really needed detailed information about production for my next year's plan. Now, a different approach using social science research practices, if I use that approach, I could get more insight about my production needs. Surveys or focus groups that involve current customers, past customers, never before customers, and asking them specific questions about texture, flavor, and types, in addition to an open-ended question or two, would give more targeted insight about what I specifically need to act on. If I only used crowdsourcing, then my representative sample is compromised and I'm getting information about constructs outside of what my focus is. Now, this happens in education when we get comments about constructs that are limited or misaligned with our intended focus. I participated in activities like these, and I saw a comment that was rated as number 1, but it only had 9 ratings. And they weren't all top rated. They weren't all like 5-star ratings or, a level 5 rating. But it had 9 ratings. And that was out of hundreds and hundreds of participants. So is that enough to drive change or inform policy? And here's a bonus issue as it relates to the research report that informed the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations. There was a lit review that looked at past crowdsourcing activities as well as articles, and the intention was to look at differences across stakeholder groups in terms of their perceptions about the graduation measures topic. However, with the crowdsourcing approach, there was a limitation with the convenience sample, and they did address that limitation in the report. So that was important to provide some context that it wasn't truly representative of differences across demographic groups. And with a high stakes decision like the future of education, I would have done a different approach to ensure sufficient representation across different demographics and using that to inform the recommendations. However, that didn't happen as of the date of this recording. In the research report, there's also a table, which I'll show here, that appears on page 11, and it shows the association between college and career readiness and success outcomes. And here's a quote directly from the report. The literature review analyzed the positive association between college, career, and civic readiness indicators and 6 success measures. Regarding the statement and the table, you analyze the relationship first and then determine whether or not it's a positive or a negative association. And for a high stakes decision, are these relationships significant? To what degree are they really strong relationships or not? Which ones are the strongest? Which are the weakest? We have no indication of that here. Now, there's none of this to shed light on what's actually most important because it's based on a qualitative literature review of non-representative data. Now, looking at the table again, if I gathered up all of the state assessment data and did a correlation with college GPA, does this mean there's no relationship there at all? That's what this table is implying. Now, it might not be a strong relationship, but according to this chart, it doesn't exist in any of the qualitative literature. So there are data that can be analyzed about all of these topics that are quantitative as well. Why wasn't that done before the entire education system is turned upside down? I'm kind of feeling like Chicken Little again. Now, I wish I had better news, but every time I look at these reports, I feel like we are in for a world of problems. While the intention of these changes is logical, the flaws in the research could have us working in the wrong direction and potentially make things worse. If you want to ensure that your team is going in the right direction for your students, pick up a copy of my new book, Your School Sucks, Why Schools Fail to Measure Up and What to Do About It. And regardless of where the policy recommendations end up in New York or what things look like at your state or a country level, there are ways that you can ensure that you're meeting the needs of your students and leading to greater levels of success based on solid evidence. Thanks for joining me. Hope you'll join us for the next episode of Measure Up, the podcast for transformational school leaders. Have a significant week.